This is FFA Poultry Judging, Class 4, Ready to Cook Carcasses. Class 4 is a grading class of 10 ready-to-cook chicken and or turkey carcasses and or parts. Carcasses will be shown here, but if parts were to be used, they would be judged based on the same criteria. Chicken carcasses will weigh between 2 and 6 pounds. Turkey carcasses will weigh between 6 and 16 pounds. Carcasses and parts are to be graded based on the latest USDA standards. USDA quality grades are A, B, and C. NG designates non-gradable. The following factors are used to determine the grade of the chicken: conformation, such as the conformation of the breastbone, back, legs, and wings; fleshing, fat covering, exposed flesh, discolorations, disjointed and broken bones, missing parts, and freezing defects. For conformation, moderate deformities in the breastbone, back, or legs and wings result in a grade B carcass, and seriously curved or crooked parts or abnormal parts result in a grade C conformation. For fleshing, well-fleshed birds are considered A quality, moderately fleshed birds are considered B quality, and poorly fleshed birds are considered C quality. A quality birds should have a well-developed layer of fat, especially between heavy feather tracts. A B quality bird should have a sufficient fat layer, especially on the breast and legs, and a C quality bird would be lacking in fat covering all parts of the carcass. The first carcass we will look at is a grade A carcass. The rules say that this carcass should have no cuts or tears on the skin greater than 1/4 inch in length on the breasts or legs, and should have no evidence of broken bones or more than one disjoint. The student should rotate the chicken in the shackle and carefully examine it for defects. The amount of exposed flesh allowed depends on the weight of the carcass. For a carcass that weighs between 2 and 6 pounds, as you see here, on the breast and legs, 1/4 inch is the maximum allowed in order for the carcass to be a grade A. Elsewhere it can be 1 1/2 inches. For a 6 to 16 pound carcass, 1/2 inch of exposed flesh may be allowed on the breast and legs, and 2 inches elsewhere to be considered a grade A. This is an evisceration cut and is perfectly acceptable on a grade A carcass. While the student is not allowed to touch the carcass during a contest, they should thoroughly inspect the wings for any evidence of a defect. Also, it's important to carefully examine the saddle of the carcass at the hips to ensure that no cuts in the skin are present. This is an example of cut or torn skin on the breast of the carcass. This cut is larger than 1/4 inch in length, so the carcass is downgraded to a B grade carcass. This is an example of cut or torn skin on the leg of the carcass. This cut is larger than 1/4 inch in length, so the carcass is downgraded to a B grade carcass. This is an example of cut or torn skin on the leg of the carcass that is larger than 1/3 of the part, so this makes the carcass a C grade. This is an example of cut or torn skin on the breast of the carcass that's larger than 1/3 of the part, so this makes the carcass a C grade. The bottom cut is an example of cut or torn skin on a body part other than the breast or legs. The rules say that if the cut is less than 1 1/2 inches in length, the carcass is still an A. The top cut on the back of this carcass is greater than 1 1/2 inches as shown by the ruler on the right. My thumb is marking the 1 1/2 inch mark. This defect makes the carcass a B grade. For discolorations, for a bird between 2 and 6 pounds, the discoloration must be between 1 and 2 inches in size for an A grade carcass, 2 and 3 inches in size for a B grade carcass, and no limit for a C grade carcass. For a 6 to 16 pound bird, the discolorations that are between 1 1/2 inches and 2 1/2 inches are A grade carcass. Discolorations between 2 1/2 inches and 4 inches would be a B grade carcass, and no limit for a C grade carcass. A grade A carcass may have the wing tips or flippers removed, and the tail may be removed even with the body of the carcass. On this carcass, we will look at disjoints. The rules say that a carcass may have one disjoint and still remain a grade A carcass. Just as with broken, non-protruding bones, it is important for students to carefully examine the area around the disjoint to see whether there is skin covering the disjointed bone. As the contest wears on, this skin may become transparent and appear as though the bone is protruding out of the skin. In order for the chicken to be downgraded to a B grade carcass, two disjoints must be present. Usually, in a contest, a carcass with a disjointed leg will be hung by one hock, so that the leg that is disjointed can be seen at a perpendicular angle to the carcass. Also, the way the wing hangs in comparison to the other wing is an easy way to tell that the wing is disjointed. This is a grade B carcass. In the next section, we will look at a carcass with a broken, unexposed, or non-protruding bone in the leg. It is important for students to realize that during a contest, if chickens hang for long periods of time, the skin will dry out and become transparent, making it appear as though the bone is protruding. It is important to examine the area carefully to determine if the skin is covering the broken bone. Next, we look at a broken, unexposed, or non-protruding bone in the wing of the carcass. The way that a student can tell if the wing bones are broken is that the wing will appear to be curved instead of flat. Comparing the broken, curved wing to an unbroken, flat wing on the other side of the carcass is an excellent way to tell whether or not the wing has been broken, and can help the student to easily distinguish between the two. This is an example of a broken and exposed or protruding bone on the leg of the carcass. Because leg bones on chickens are large, this defect is usually very easy to see. This is a broken and exposed or protruding bone on the wing of the carcass. Because the wing bones on chickens are very small, this defect can be easily overlooked by students, so they should be careful to examine the inside of the wings for broken, exposed bones. What if the carcass has one disjoint and one broken, non-protruding bone? It is downgraded to a grade B carcass as shown here. When evaluating a carcass for tail cuts, students should become familiar with where the leg bone attaches to the backbone of the carcass. This is called the hip joint and can be felt by probing the back of the carcass. This is the reference point to use when determining grade on carcasses with back cuts. My thumb is marking the location of the hip joint in this instance. Another way to determine where the hip joint is to look for the oyster muscles. These are the two bumps on either side of the spine. The hip joint is located just beyond those bumps toward the tail. Point between the hip joint and the base of the tail. Keep in mind, I said the base of the tail is located. A tail cut that is less than halfway to the hip joint, as shown here, is a grade B carcass. Again, a tail cut that is less than halfway to the hip joint is a grade B carcass. Now for a grade C carcass, the tail cut must extend between halfway to the hip joint and beyond. The cut that I make here on this carcass extends all the way to the hip joint. This is a grade C carcass. The next carcass defect we want to look at is missing parts. For wings, if half of the wing is removed, this part is also known as the wing flat. Then the carcass is downgraded to a B grade carcass. If the entire wing is removed, then the carcass is downgraded to a C grade carcass, as shown here. Although not mentioned in your manual, trim is used as a criterion for USDA grading. If the part has been trimmed to the thickness of about a nickel or 1/8 inch or less, then it's a B grade carcass. If the flesh of the breast or leg has been trimmed to a thickness of more than 1/8 inch or the thickness of a nickel, then the carcass is a C grade. For freezing defects, slight darkening on the back or on the drumstick would be considered an A grade carcass. Overall bright appearance, occasional pockmarks due to drying, occasional small areas of clear pinkish or reddish colored ice, all would be considered grade A. For grade B carcasses, they may lack brightness, few pockmarks due to drying, they may have moderate areas showing layer of clear pinkish or reddish colored ice, and for a grade C carcass, numerous pockmarks and large dried areas.